Welcome to Get Naked with Dr. Kate. I'm your host, Dr. Kate Balestrieri, a Beverly Hills-based psychologist, certified sex therapist, and the founder of Modern Intimacy. Thanks for joining me here where I talk about sex, relationships, mental health, and dive into your questions with practical answers and real solutions. Each week, I share insights aimed at helping you build an authentic and healthy relationship with yourself, with others, and with your sexuality. It's time to get naked, emotionally, mentally, and on your own time, physically. Hi, everyone. This week, I am here on the Get Naked with Dr. Kate podcast with Crystal Hefner, who has a new book that is out today, and it is called Only Say Good Things, Surviving Playboy and Finding Myself. Crystal, thanks so much for being here with me and sharing your story.
Me. Thank you.
Yeah. How did you get to a place where you felt ready to talk about and write about your experience?
I think it was a friend that encouraged me to write the story. Mm-hmm. I had been in therapy for about 5 years, post-Mansion life, and trying to make sense of everything. Because I feel that we didn't have certain terms back then, and that was pre-Me Too and everything. So, yeah, just making sense of it myself. And then one of my friends said, you should really, tell the story. And life at the mansion was very public. So I do feel that I owe it to people who followed along, my story and my truth.
That's interesting. You feel like you owe people who were following the fantasy of Playboy the inside scoop. Can you say a little bit more about why?
Yeah, because, Hef, he controlled the narrative for all those years, 70 years plus, ever since he had the magazine and the lifestyle. He controlled the whole narrative. And I think people that kind of followed him and followed me, they fit into that same narrative. And while all these people are kind of watching us, internally, you're like, this isn't what it seems. This isn't what people think it is. So I do feel that I owe it to those people to just let them know, like, what really happened. And I don't know. I've met a lot of fans that have become friends over the years. So I feel that it's nice to have this story for them.
Yeah. And for you, what's it been like to write and share your experience?
For me, it's been definitely healing. And when I was at the mansion, at any time you feel like you could be replaced, at any time you feel like the rug could be pulled from under you, is like 24/7 anxiety. But now I have nothing to hide and nothing to lose. So yeah, I just think it's the right time.
Yeah. There's been so much conversation in the last few years about what really happened in the Playboy world. And I've been curious because you've been more quiet about your perspective until recently. Yeah. But how has it impacted you to see so many other people talking about a world that you had such intimate knowledge about?
It was a little hard, especially, sitting back and watching things like the A&E documentary Secrets of Playboy, and some things I'm like, oh yeah, that's definitely true. That's definitely possible. And other things I just felt were a stretch and I didn't really believe. So some of that was hard to, just watch and like, okay, people need to know the truth. People need to know what really went on. So it was kind of from that. Yeah. I don't know.
Okay. Well, you talked a lot in your book about how it's been difficult for you throughout your time in the world, kind of navigating media and the struggles that you had with media initially before you had any media training and experience. So I'm really curious about what your evolution in talking about your story has been like as you've left the mansion, but also as you become more and more familiar with yourself and with what to expect in interviews.
Yeah, the media, I was, low-hanging fruit for the media. They could ask me all kinds of questions. I was a target. What's it like being with an old man? What all old balls look like? All this stuff where they could just, that was a low hanging fruit. They could just make fun of me all they wanted. I was an easy target. So that was hard. And I did media training kind of in between. It wasn't through Playboy. It wasn't through Hef. I just felt I need help and nobody here is helping me. So I hired my own person and, she did tell me, she's like, well, when these people ask you things, you don't have to answer and you don't have to fill dead space. It's like their job. And it made me feel more confident. I know that those are simple, silly things, but I didn't have those tools. Like I didn't even really know what a boundary was back then. Yeah. And this is all pre-Me Too. So it was hard. It was hard. And, going back to your other question about the other people that wrote books and things like that. When Holly came out with a book and people were coming out with these different things against the mansion when I was still there, I was Team Hef. Like, oh, these people are crazy, or how could they say these things about a man who's done so much for them? And I was Team Hef still. And I was there even when these were coming out. It took until, it took therapy and years to finally get it and understand the truth. And it took me trying to date and move forward with my life, which, I'm like, wow, this place really messed with me more than I thought it did.
Yeah, I can imagine it. So much of what you talk about in the book is really that common thread of having to disappear yourself in order to survive and basically stay in the mansion, which what it sounds like, and correct me if I've read this wrong, but it sounded like for you, the mansion represented security and safety in so many ways, even though at times it felt over-controlling or there were rules of engagement that felt really hard to understand or be in compliance with. But can you talk a little bit about kind of what that was like and what about it did feel safe that had you kind of defending the mansion at the time and now what you see differently?
Yeah. So I think in the beginning, growing up, I had, unstable childhood. My dad passed away when I was young, and my mom and I bounced around different places, different apartments. At one point, we were just in one bedroom in someone's house. So I think part of the allure for the mansion for me was just being somewhere where I felt like I finally belonged, that I felt wanted, loved, and somewhere that I can belong. And sometimes I feel like that's really important, even over love, just feeling that you belong somewhere. And when I first got to the mansion, it was a beautiful home. There's carved wood. I've never seen carved wood. I've only been in, apartments with drywall. I'm like, all this wood on the wall is carved, and have had pajamas in every single color of the rainbow. Just like, wow, this is amazing. It's like Willy Wonka. You show up, you're like, whoa. I just thought it was magical. I was on 5 acres of land in the middle of LA, and I'm like, wow, I'm going to do whatever it takes to stay here and be here and be important here. And so what I would do was just like everything that Hef liked. Oh, he wants to watch all these old movies. I'm going to get into all these movies. I'm going to learn all the actors and just love whatever Hef loves, because it seems like that's what he wanted. Now I know that that's narcissism. Like, I didn't back then. I'm like, oh, he's just quirky. And so I just lost myself into him completely, made myself small, forfeited my own needs and wants and desires, and just to feel that I belonged and have a place. But now that I'm more stable on my own, I can't believe I ever did that. And now if I ever get married again, I don't want to change my name. I don't want to. Yeah. It's better now. I'm much stronger.
Speaking of names, you've retained the Hefner last name.
Yes.
Can you say a little bit about your thoughts around that?
Yes, I do get asked that a lot.
Yeah.
And the book happened so fast. When I was at the mansion, after we got married, Hef's secretary, Mary, immediately started the filings to change my name to Hefner because that's what Hef wanted. And I do remember that I had a friend that got married shortly after, and she asked me, like, oh, how do I change my name? I'm like, I have no idea. It was just all done for me. It just, so all my social media started, that's when Instagram came out and everything came out. And so I was just Crystal Hefner across the board on everything. And that's how it's been. So the years of therapy, the book, and now I'm faced with, okay, I don't want to be tied to this man. I don't want to, I know I will forever because I was there for a decade and it's part of history, but I do want to go back to my original name. So,
yeah. I was wondering about that as you think about finding yourself and getting to know yourself again. And you were at the mansion for a decade, and you were so famously known in this role and as somebody adjacent to Hef for so long. Yeah. It's undoubtedly impacted who you are and probably will be a through line, right, for the rest of your life, as it is for many people who get married and then leave that relationship and go, oh, I'm learning so many new things about myself out of that relationship, right? It does stay with us. But because you had such a public experience, it's really hard to assimilate that experience into who you are today and then run into people in the world who only know you in this sort of one-dimensional way. So what has been some of your experiences? You're leaning into a bit of a new evolved identity, but other people aren't meeting you there yet. I'm assuming they're not.
Yeah, I think it's taking a while. And I think just me personally getting away from that for a while. Like I bought a property in Hawaii and I've been spending a lot of time there and just kind of getting away from being around those kind of people that tie me so much to that place. But I feel like I'm still working on it, which it's hard because this book is coming out and I'm just reliving everything. But once that's over, then I'll go back to just being more quiet. But it's hard. It is hard. And I have been trying to figure out who I am. It would be nice to have a family and be married. I spoke to a couple of matchmakers and they had asked me like, oh, what are your hobbies? What do you like? And it was a question that I felt dumb because I couldn't really answer. I'm like, I'm not sure. So then I'm fumbling. I'm like, travel. And so I'm like, okay, I'm not ready for this. I need to heal more, find out what I like. It sounds simple, like kind of dumb and simple, but it's hard.
It is hard.
It's like, who am I? What do I like? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's part of what comes with being in a relationship that is so asymmetrical in terms of who is attuned to, right? And I was really struck in your book about how clear it was, just the magnetic force of attention and orbit that seemed to follow Hef throughout the whole house and I mean the whole world.
Yeah.
But really, I mean, everyone had to disappear themselves, and it sounded like there was so much neglect of personality, neglect of individuality, neglect of attention for anyone who wasn't Hef. And that takes a huge toll on someone, especially you were so young going through your early adult years there, and really it's a huge formative time in our lives.
Yeah, definitely. It was hard then going through all of that and just being somebody's shadow, basically. I think because I was just his shadow that my mind just focused on him and analyzed him a little bit. Because we would go to Disneyland and places like that. He was an American icon and so famous. And people would be like, Hugh, you're the man. Oh my God, Hugh, I want to be just like you and all this. And I'm like, yeah, he's, and in my mind, I'm like, I'm with someone cool. And but then after a while, like, he's just a lonely, sad, he's like a lonely, sad little boy that created this whole entire lifestyle and persona to fill this void that he never filled.
When did you first start to see that? And what was that like for you internally to have that shift?
I think it was when he would open up and start talking about his parents and how they didn't really show love in the home with him and his brother or with each other. When he started telling me sad stories of being in love when he was young, or loving somebody or liking somebody a lot. He talked about a girl in high school he had a big crush on, but she went on a hayride with someone else. And then he spoke about going to the army, and Millie, who he was engaged to, cheated on him while he was away. He came back and he still married her. I'm like, wow, he's had a lot of heartbreak, like heart smashing moments. And I think he tried to overcompensate for all of that when he started Playboy. And he would cry he'd watch the same old movies with the same doom love stories, and Casablanca was his favorite, and he would just cry, and it's sad. I'm like, you've seen this before, you know that you know what happens. And yeah, he would cry a lot during movies. It's like almost sometimes he doesn't between reality and fantasy, the lines were probably pretty blurred for him at that point, but he was a sad kind of soul, and it took time to realize that, but by the end I did.
By the end when you were still at the mansion, or by the end of your healing?
By the end of being at the mansion.
Yeah.
Up until the day he died. I'm like, oh, this is really sad.
You talk about in your book the process of how you got married. And I think for the people who weren't you and weren't living in the mansion, it seemed like a whirlwind romance. It was like such a fairy tale. And of course it was designed to look that way. Yeah. But what was the reality of how that all came to be?
Honestly, I think he just wanted a good PR story for the end of his life. Because as soon as Holly, Bridget, and Kendra left, it's like all of a sudden it's like, I'm dating twins. And then I came in the picture. But I do think it was kind of a publicity thing, or I don't know, because we never really talked about being in love or those next steps. Part of me in the back of my mind always knew, like, okay, this place isn't forever. This person's much older than me. So just try and enjoy things while they last. But we didn't talk really about marriage. His secretary had asked me what kind of rings I like or what kind of shape of diamond. Like, oh, I don't know. It was random one day. I said, oh, maybe square. And she goes, oh, round is much better because it sparkles more when the light hits it. And that was it. And Christmas Eve, I opened a music box. It was the Little Mermaid. And there was just a ring in there. And he said, I hope it fits. So it's like either I'm marrying this man or I'm moving out tomorrow, which I wasn't prepared for that. So it happened.
And this was after you had left the mansion for a little while and you came back.
Yeah. After I came back.
Yeah.
Maybe he wanted to make sure I didn't leave again. I don't know.
Maybe.
Like a faithful follower and put him on the pedestal. So, yeah.
But you knew at that point you didn't really love him in the way that you wanted to love a partner, right? But you had a different kind of care.
Yeah. I think I'm still trying to unpack that because I cared about him. And in a weird way. But I know he couldn't really love me in the way that real love's supposed to be. I think real love doesn't involve like multiple people in the bedroom and things like that. So I think he loved me the best way he knew how.
Yeah, maybe the best way he would let himself love.
Yeah.
After that heartbreak. So you got married. It was a bit of a whirlwind. Like, what did it feel like for you on your actual wedding day?
It felt very uneventful. The first wedding we were planning had like 300 guests. We were getting RSVPs from like Gene Simmons and Paris Hilton. And I'm like, oh, this is becoming a real hoopla. And I'm pretty introverted, so I wasn't into that. So the second time around, it was just maybe 10 people in the Great Hall of the mansion. And they were asking about vows and things like that. And Hef was like, oh, my back hurts. So the least time I have to stand up, the better. Like, this is so weird. So it all happened so fast. and I wore a pink dress, which weirdly enough, I purposely chose pink.
Because?
Because I knew it wasn't real. And for my real wedding, I would want a white dress.
Yeah.
Weird.
There was some part of you that was really self-protective in those moments.
Yeah, very push-pull in my mind.
Yeah.
I feel it.
Yeah. So in the years following you leaving the mansion, which you had to leave kind of abruptly after Hef's passing, right? About 6 weeks or so?
Yeah. So I remember Hef had sold the company in about 2011, and then the company sold the house. I think they needed the money at the time. They sold it to the neighbor for $100 million, and then they pulled me into the office and said, if something were to happen to Hef, how long do you need to move out of here? And I thought, am I just moving my stuff? Because that would be like 5 minutes. Most of my stuff was in storage. I never felt at home there. But Hef's stuff was just, since 1971, just piled everywhere. We asked for 6 months. They gave us 3 months. Okay. And so he died in September, and we were out by December with everything, all of Hef's stuff.
That's a lot to move in such a short amount of time.
Yeah. When they asked me, I cried, and I thought, why are they asking me this? This is terrible that they would ask something like this. But then he ended up dying like that year. Like, oh, well, I'm glad that was put into place. And
you had already really taken to task this idea of like trying to preserve what you could and organize and kind of clear things away. And all of this was not your stuff, right?
Yeah, it was all of Hef's stuff, piles and piles and piles. In the bedroom was carpeted, and there was just piles of stuff everywhere. And there's like little walkways that you could still kind of get through. He was just the biggest type of hoarder. And I think part of it was just wanting to hang on to things, and the other part of it is feeling like everything he touched was like part of history and had to be, categorized and kept. But eventually I just started getting rid of so many things and cleaned it up, and things were dusty and moldy, and it was just not the cleanest place.
What were your interactions with Hef like at that point in the journey?
As he got older, he became more reliant on me, and I just felt like I couldn't leave him. If I was gone, he would have them, the staff in the downstairs call me, and the security staff call me, like, Mr. Hefner's looking for you. The boss is wondering where you are. Like, wow, he needs me. There's not any other person he was doing that to or for. He didn't do that about his own family. So I'm like, he needs me. And at that point, I had enough money. Like, I was already had a few $1 million or whatever. Like, I don't need to be there anymore, but I still stayed there all the way to the very end. Yeah.
Did it feel nice to be needed by someone who was so revered?
Yes.
Yeah.
It did. And isn't that weird and kind of creepy? Because it's like, I didn't have a life, but I'm like, oh, somebody needs me. Like, you feel, but I think it just comes out of a place of maybe selfish for him. Like, he's just, still trying to unpack that.
It's a process, right?
Yeah, like, whoa.
Yeah. So you lived in this house, and in your book, and you've said it today, like, you didn't really feel like it was your home. There wasn't a lot of time where you could just be leisurely or have your own space, except for the vanity closet area, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even there, I just felt you could see the gap under the door and like footsteps and shadows, and it was like sliding doors to Hef's room or the bathroom, and it didn't feel very private there either. There was not really a place. I felt that I had to be on 24/7. So it was just this constant anxiety 24/7 for 10 years.
Which probably was awful for your nervous system.
Yeah. Probably contributed to getting sick for sure.
Yeah. When you moved out and got your own place, what was the process of making it a home like for you, since you lived in a space that was so not private and not homey for you for such a long time?
It felt very nice, actually, to just put up what I wanted to put up and not have people walking around 24/7, and having a kitchen that I could actually cook in, because at the mansion you weren't really allowed in the kitchen. There were people in there that cooked for you. It was like a restaunt style kitchen. Just feeling normal again was really nice, and I appreciated it. And I think I like the quiet life best.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. What, if anything, do you miss about that lifestyle?
Nothing. I would say, I don't know. Nothing really, actually. Mm-hmm. I don't miss the parties. I don't miss being cooked for, which is weird. Like, I always felt awkward. Like I'd have to call down for food and then someone would bring it up on a tray. I'm like, oh, sorry, Sheila. Like, I could have come down and got it. You know, we're all the same. Like, I'm not, you know, but Hef didn't see it that way. You know, these people are all here to serve him and they'd be so grateful to be there. And yeah. Oof.
Yeah.
He didn't know any of their names. They all worked there for 10, 20 years. And, you know, I don't know, dear, because he needed something on their way back out. And you don't even know her name.
Everybody was fungible. His girlfriends, the staff, other people in the world, everyone was fungible.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. So what has it been like for you dating as you've like come into a new chapter?
Very hard.
Yeah. What are you running into?
I'm running into all kinds of problems. I did find that I was in a relationship that was kind of controlling, and the person manipulated me a bit. And they were also in and out of jobs. So I was pretty much paying for things and trips. And I got to the point where I'm like, wait a minute. This is just like the mansion, except I'm paying all the bills. This is a way worse scenario. So that ended. And yeah, everyone has their stuff, but
everyone does have their stuff. Yeah.
It's a matter of cutting it off soon.
Yeah.
When you notice something, I'm usually the type where I notice something and then I'm like, oh, I can help them. Or they just don't have the tools and I can help them. Don't ever let them help themselves. Cut it off.
Yes.
Don't waste your life.
Yeah. I read something today that said, I can't remember where, it said women should not set themselves on fire to keep other people warm.
Oh, yeah.
And I just thought, yes, that's so smart, because women are so conditioned to just be giving and giving and giving and giving, especially to men.
Why do we do that?
Well, patriarchy.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. But I was curious with you, with your experience in dating, how do you even meet people, one? And have you experienced men sort of wanting to date you because they actually want a slice of the Playboy life, not Crystal in real life?
Interesting. Yeah. I talked to Kendra recently from the Girls Next Door, and she had that problem where they wanted to date her. And it's like, just because she's part of Playboy and they were curious, you know, they didn't really like her for her or want to get to know her. I haven't, unless people hide it really well, I haven't really come across that problem.
Okay.
I've come across a problem where like I end up being somebody's sugar mama, but I'm not letting that happen anymore. And then what was the other part we were talking about?
Yeah, just, do people treat you as a human now, or are they still sort of engaging with you because you remind them of a fantasy and they want some sort of access to that?
I think for the most part, it's just wanting to get to know me, hopefully. But I do have friends that I thought were my friends, and then like, oh, okay, they're just trying to use me for like whatever they think I can do for them or help them with. And that's really hard because it's like, I'm not part of any big corporation, or I can't get anybody any access or anything. Right. I don't even do any of that stuff. But I think the other thing you asked was, where do I meet people?
Yes. Yeah.
And the relationships, I barely go out like in the wild. Like, I don't know how to meet people in the wild. So I use online dating. I've tried a couple matchmakers that ended horribly.
Oh no.
Oh my goodness.
What happened? If you can
Should
say.
I spill the tea?
Yeah.
I was sent on one date. They're like, oh, they're flying here and you'll meet them at the Beverly Hills Hotel. And he's flying here just to see you. And he's a celebrity, but he's not an actor or a singer.
Well, who does that
And
leave?
they don't, yeah, right? I'm like, they don't give you pictures. So now I'm like, I need to see a picture of him. So I go in there and then this guy comes up and I'm like, his face looks familiar.
Okay.
And it was Papa John Pizza, that guy.
Oh, the guy
John,
who owns it?
Yeah, John Schnauder. He was in all the commercials like
Oh.
Papa John's, better ingredients, Papa John's. And we're having this conversation about like how to make the best pizza. And if you bite it, like then pull, the cheese shouldn't all come off. It should stay on the rest of the piece. I was like, oh, how do you like to be addressed? Like, what should I call you? And he's like, oh, most people just call me Papa. And after that, he's so nice. But he's older.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, is everyone just trying to throw me to older guys?
These older, wealthy men.
Yeah. So then I went on Mariah. And my relationships have been from Mariah.
Okay.
And it's been like 1 out of 3 have been good.
Okay. 1 out of 3. That sounds about right with what most people would say.
But it's a great app.
Yeah.
For in my opinion, it's a great app. I don't know if you've heard of it or
I have heard of
been
it.
on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll plead the 5th. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been cool. There's a lot of people you wouldn't want to meet on there, but there's some good ones.
Yeah. I think that's true with any of the apps and in the wild.
Yeah, dating is hard.
It is. It's really hard.
And then I'm also like dating different ages. So I'm like, okay, are these people more mature than these people?
So before you were with Hef, you had some more like age appropriate folks.
Yes.
Age appropriate. I don't even like that word, but age
Yeah,
similar.
yeah.
Age similar.
Yeah.
And then such a big disparity in age, obviously, with Hef. And so now, like, when you say you're dating people from different age groups, what feels comfortable for you? What feels interesting? What feels edgy or uncomfortable?
I don't know how to explain that all the way. I did meet somebody who was 24.
Okay.
Which is very interesting because they wrote to me on Raya. I looked at their photos, I thought they were cute and whatever. And then I realized, I looked at their age and I wrote to them and I said, hey, like I'm older than you. And then he just wrote back, I know, like he didn't care. And so I'm like, okay, I'm not going to mention it again.
Okay.
And so we went on a few dates in New York and he was just so sweet and so kind. And I feel that, I don't know if it's like what I say, generation. I feel the people the same age, we grew up with such misogynistic culture and movies, a lot of the songs. It was just bad. And so I think, if anything, I'm not dating the person now or anything, but it really taught me something where, people that are younger, they're more respectful and it seems more equal. So that was just kind of a breath of fresh air, kind of a nice little lesson. But lately I've been dating somebody that's the same age or 1 year older.
Okay.
And it's nice. It's nice dating someone close in age because you can have all the same references and like, oh, what Nickelodeon shows did you watch? Like Hef wouldn't even know what Nickelodeon was,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been interesting. Dating is very interesting.
Yeah. What about your friendships? So in choosing to write this book, have you lost any friendships? Have your relationships been strained or have they been improved? I probably met, I don't know how many girls, thousands at the mansion, and maybe I have 3 friends from it. And, female friendship was very hard there. So now I am meeting more people and just trying to meet new friends. Hang on to the old, but meeting new friends. And 2024 for me is having stronger boundaries and getting rid of the people that I feel I'm really there for them and it doesn't feel reciprocated. So I'm working on friendship this year. Yeah. Yeah. Friendship is so key. It's literally the thing that keeps us alive in many instances because we are so prone to isolation in such a digitized world. And then if you put all of your stock in romantic relationship, if something happens to that relationship, it really does leave you kind of unmoored.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really sad. It's really hard to bounce back. I've definitely had that happen to me. It's hard.
You mentioned that you had a conversation with Kendra a little while ago. I'm curious, do you keep in touch with any of the other women who have been in the mansion?
Mostly Kendra. Mm-hmm. I like her attitude that she's just, whatever happened. Yeah. And she's fine. Mm-hmm. And the other two girls, Holly and Bridget, they're a little bit more defensive, and you have to be careful what you say. If you say the wrong thing, then they'll be upset at you. So it's hard. We had some discrepancy about dog birthday parties.
What?
I know. So then Holly decided to be mean to me again. Oh. And we're not talking. I wish we would all get along, but
that wasn't the nature of that experience, right? Women were pitted against each other. It was part of what I imagine created a lot of affirmation for Hef, that he was desired when other women were competing for his attention.
Yeah, and I think that got ingrained into some of these women in such a cellular level. Because with Holly, I'm like, just stop it. Just get along. It doesn't matter. Whoever was a playmate or a bunny or was there for a day or for 10 years, just everyone's cool. We all had our reasons for being there, and let's just all get along. Yeah. It would be really nice.
Well, I imagine everyone's on their own journey, making sense of what their experience was like and how to think about healing and how to think about incorporating parts of that life into where they are today.
I understand that, and I just know that I don't think she's ready to accept me as a friend or anything like that.
Yeah. That sucks. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah. I remember reading in your book that you were talking about how in the filming of I think it was filming of Girls Next Door, where there were just these contrived and fabricated tensions put out there between you and Holly, and it was so made up. Is that part of what kind of contributed to this?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so, because I don't think she realized it was made up at the time, but I remember doing my Playmate shoot, and they had given me a hat, and it had Holly in the hat. Just
like the word or
the berries or whatever.
Okay.
And so then they did the record scratch noise and showed it on my hat, and it was so embarrassing. And then another time the producer had me say, I'm not the new Holly. Holly's the old me. And I'm sure that got to her, because then she was saying some things they asked, her daughter's name is Rainbow, and they said to her, "Isn't that a stripper name?" She said, "Oh no, stripper name is Crystal."
Oh my gosh.
I'm how old are we?
Wow.
I'm almost 40, and so I don't know how old. Yeah. Come on now. It's okay. Hopefully we'll all get along.
Hopefully.
Eventually.
I think 2024 is going to be the year of female rage and female healing. There are so many women who are already starting to unpack and look at the world of misogyny and objectification and patriarchy and all of that, and they're angry. They're seeing how much of a grift it's been for themselves, their relationships, their friendships. Even a lot of mother-daughter relationships are so strained by all of these misogynistic influences that people are conditioned into from birth. And I'm really curious, as you've been unpacking and learning, how have you been seeing the world differently based on your experiences at the mansion and the healing work that you've done? How's it impacted the way you feel safe or don't,
I think I'm definitely in the anger phase as well, because, I hide from it because you realize it's everywhere. The misogyny, it's disgusting.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. And I honestly stick to watching Disney films, because you put on something and it's the toxic male gaze, and I just turn it right off.
Yeah. Yeah. You had this really great phrase in your book. You were talking about that male gaze not in the context of movies per se, but in the context of witnessing it with a young girl that you were neighbors with, and the look on her face when you realized what had happened to her. You said she was simultaneously haunted and hunted. And it was an expression you recognized in her and so many of the other girls in your experience. And can we unpack that a little bit more and talk about like what does that look like? What does it feel to see it? And is that what you mean by the male gaze and sort of the impact?
Yeah. I think it kind of gave me like thinking back to that poor girl.
Yeah.
There is kind of this look and this kind of vibe, and a lot of girls that came through the mansion, you know, they were lost. I was lost.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of them were just, because of being so lost, they were just very easily manipulated.
Mm-hmm.
So you feed into the misogyny and feed into whatever might get you some attention or admiration or love or anything. And you just, you're part of it. You become part of the problem. I was part of the problem. I was posting, you know, bikini pictures, boobs out, butt out, like completely contributing to this, you know, follow my friend who has the same kind of pictures. And that's how my Instagram grew. Just toxic, appealing to
the male gaze.
Yeah, it would be like Super Bowl Sunday, and I'm like almost naked, but hashtag Super Bowl. And then I get 25,000 new followers. And so I was contributing to that. And I am embarrassed to have contributed to that. But I'm glad that I am now aware. And I feel like a lot of people are still working on the awareness part.
I think so too. And you bring up an interesting point. And it's something that I hear a lot from, I'll just say male trolls online who don't like that women are seeing things differently and starting to show up differently and ask questions and push back. But one of the claims that I see a lot, or that I hear a lot from male trolls, is what about women's accountability? Women are doing this too. And I have such mixed feelings about it and about what you just said, right? Because were you a part of the problem? Maybe, right? And I wonder about how much of, like, what's the line between taking accountability and stepping away from a system when we see it, but also surviving in a system and doing that the best way that you know how, and now being blamed for it. You know, there's such a deflection that gets put on women, so much victim blaming and slut shaming that I think detracts from a lot of what would be well-placed accountability in men. Yeah.
I mean, I guess we are hard on ourselves, and it doesn't seem like men are very hard on themselves.
No. I think not the ones who probably would benefit from a little bit of reflection.
Yeah, but I feel that a lot of those men are not going to do that. They're not going to have that reflection. Yeah. You know, a lot of men that were at the mansion, I know that they're going to, you know, stay toxic forever. One well-known actor that would frequent the mansion, he said to me, like, oh yeah, so can we recreate that vibe at my place? What? I had another actor that asked me to go to lunch because one half was still alive, saying, you know, he needs to pass the torch to someone and it might as well be me.
Wow.
And these men, it's so ingrained in them in a cellular level that they're never going to change, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's become part of who they are to just be gross.
Well, I think, you know, they're humans like the rest of us, but they have been so conditioned to experience like proximity to women as a marker of their success as men. And so they don't even, I work with a lot of men who are like this. Yeah. And when they first come into therapy, they don't really even understand how they're objectifying women. They don't get it. And I do believe that they don't get it. And it takes a long time for them to realize just how subtle and implicit the ways that they think about women and treat women are in perpetrating these systems of, sexism and all the things.
Absolutely, because once they learn, they're going to attract better quality women.
Yeah.
They're going to attract, women that respect themselves more don't want to be around men like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, those men don't respect themselves either.
True.
And that's the thing.
The problem.
Yeah, like water meets its level. So when you have people who are defining themselves by how many women they have proximity to, and you're going to have women who are also defining themselves by, being desired by men in those positions of power. But when both men and women or people of any gender say, I'm actually good without all of that external validation,
Yeah.
they start attracting and aligning with people who also feel that way.
Yeah. And the healed people, or the people that don't realize that yet, like that was the crew that was at the Playboy Mansion parties. Like those type of men and women.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. You have a really awesome quote in your book that I want to read. I read it and I was like, damn, Crystal dropping it. This is so good. Okay. You said, power is insidious when it masks itself as generosity, and generosity is insidious when it's a camouflage for control. And both power and generosity are confusing when they gaslight you to believing they could be love. Oh, I know. I read that and thought, wow, this woman has healed. She gets it now.
I feel like that was the definition of Hef.
Yeah.
You meet him and he's smiley and generous and kind, but the power imbalance is massive, and all the darkness follows, and it's just like that. And I think that's part of the magnetism and what sucked me in.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's hard not to get sucked in, because that kind of energy, that kind of behavior, it's so ingratiating. And we really want to believe that people care about us. And we want to believe that they're magnanimous, especially when we attribute so much power to them and so much idealization, right? We don't want to see people that we think are great as people who could also do really hurtful things.
Yeah, absolutely. And during the time I met him, it was pre-Me Too and like a lot of these things that I just didn't realize then. So I think the manipulation was a little easier. Yeah. But sad. I'm like, I fell for it.
I don't know one woman who has not had one of those experiences. Yeah. So when you think about yourself today, in the book you said something like, I was the person who trusted first and asked questions later, right? So how are you working on creating an approach for yourself that is discerning but also not closed off?
I'm still trying.
Yeah.
It's hard to trust people. Then I start opening myself up and start trusting people, and then something bad happens again. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a process to do that. A lot of things. Work in progress. Mm.
Well, what would you like young women or girls to know about how they see themselves, how they relate with their bodies, how they kind of establish a sense of self based on the experience that you've had in life?
Well, I think having a good sense of self is really important, and I didn't have that. And I think because I didn't have that, it was easier for me to be manipulated and molded into something that I wasn't. The goal of the book, honestly, for me was when I first started talking to the publisher, I said, I wish when I was 21, before going in that place, like I had a book like this to read. Mm-hmm. So I want to write the book that I wish I would have written when I was 21 before I went into the mansion. And I feel like I accomplished that with this. And I do hope that it helps young women. I hope a lot of young women read it, and I hope it helps with their sense of confidence and that they don't need anyone else to dictate their worth to them. That it comes from within. And when people feel that from you, they respect you more.
It also isn't something that can be taken away from you. When you feel empowered and it literally comes from within, it is yours. It's a source. It's a fuel. But power over someone else is vulnerable. It is fleeting. It's precarious. And that's why so many people have to continuously have power over someone, because they don't feel intrinsically, like they are okay. And so that's one of the big takeaways that I had from reading your story. I really loved the reflection at the end of your book, spoiler for anyone who's listening, when you were going through the scrapbooks and you noticed one letter to Hef, and the question was from a young girl who I think was 12 at the time. And she was asking, like, what do I have to do to get in to the Playboy Mansion?
Yeah.
And your reflection, can you share it? What is the cost?
It's hard. It's honestly hard for me to reread that without crying every time.
Yeah.
But there would be letters from girls at all ages to Hef. And I think as young as 11,
Wow.
a girl said, my mom got me a Playboy bedspread, and I can't wait till one day when I'm older to come to the mansion. And another girl who was a bit older than that, but still not 18, asked what they had to do to get into the mansion.
Mm-hmm.
And what I had said in the book is that you have to lose yourself, which is true. It's very, very true. And I think a lot of those hopeful girls didn't realize any of that. It was all just, to them, watching The Girls Next Door was some kind of fantasy fun life, but you completely lose yourself. And it takes so long to get yourself back. And I'm still working on that.
Yeah.
It's a process, and it was hard. And I don't recommend it to anybody.
Yeah, the cost is great. The cost is great. I mean, it's very much one of my favorite movies is The Little Mermaid too. You talk about that in your book. So good. But you talk about how you would have given your voice away to sort of have this life. And in a way you did. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I did. And now I'm finding it again. It was kind of, for me to write the book just with the publisher and collaborative writer, it was more of a quiet kind of experience. But now, being so introverted and everything, it's hard. And I'm getting out there and I'm using my voice that I didn't use before. I was just a shadow behind somebody. So it is hard. I'm not the best at doing this, but I'm showing up, and I think it's important. Yeah. So I'm using my voice. I started my own podcast for specifically that, like just to try and use my voice and just heal and hopefully help other people along the way.
Yeah. What has been your relationship with your own sexuality since you've been really challenging the male gaze and sort of challenging your ideas of what it meant to be beautiful in that context and now today? So how has your sexuality been influenced?
It's been hard. I think it's still a struggle. It's still a struggle to feel confident. It's really, I mean, usually I'm around 120, 125 pounds. I'm like I'm like 132 or something. And I'm like, called myself fat probably multiple times. Like, why am I doing this to myself? It's terrible. And I need to just work on being happy. I did get like my implants removed, and anything I could reverse in that way. I have scars, but now I just, when dating, if I sense like a hint of anything that's a little bit off, like it'll be over. Like I get very triggered.
Yeah.
I'll even go out of my way to like test them a little. But the most recent person I'm dating, I was like, oh, what do you find attractive like on a woman? Like, are there certain body parts or like, what's he going to say?
What shouldn't he say?
Well, his answer was, I'm really drawn to people that have just like a really nice face. And I'm like, okay, you pass. Yeah. You pass. Yeah. Someone's like, oh, I really want like a I'm really an ass man, or I love big boobs. I'm like, well, okay, well, that's not me, and I don't have that. And so I'm like, so then you feel like if they say something you don't have, then you feel like you're like don't have value, and it goes back to being. And I feel like because it was ingrained in me to be so shallow and physical and stuff, when I meet people, I'm like, okay, like I've dated guys that were like, look like models. And then it's like dating, not so much, but they're better people. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to unlearn the stuff that's been ingrained in my mind and see past physical.
Yeah, it's hard in a culture that so reinforces the physical, despite all of the language and the conversations that we're having about imperfections being beautiful and body neutrality. I mean, it's just something I think a lot of people have an ongoing conversation with themselves about.
Well, yeah, because sex still sells. Mm-hmm. People that are, subjectively like more attractive or beautiful or young, like get the job or get other things. So how do we change that?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a great question.
I think that's the next big part. Mm-hmm. Like, how do we do that?
But we are seeing in 2023, I think there were, I read somewhere it was like the year of the women in their 50s. Like there were just so many women in their 50s who were using their voice. They were in the spotlight. They were like basically refusing to be invisible, which is something that so many women historically have felt once they are not young and whatever. That commodity of youth is no longer something that is available. But I'm seeing women left and right saying, too bad, we're here, we have something to say, and we are not used up, we're not expendable, we are valuable humans on this planet, and I am here for it.
I love that. And I have been seeing like models that are not in their like 20s or 30s. Mm-hmm. Like I've been seeing makeup ads and different things like that, and it is cool. Mm-hmm. It is very cool, and I hope that there's more of that.
Me
for
too.
Sure.
Me too. Anything else you want people to know about you as you're finding yourself? Like, who is Crystal?
Gosh, I think Crystal is a work in progress. I think I will always be. Mm-hmm. Like, it's nice to learn and grow, and yeah, I'm just I'm happy to be here and happy to be on with you, and yeah, I hope people take away some lessons from the book that can help them in their own lives.
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming on the show and talking so candidly.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to Get Naked with Dr. Kate. Stay connected with me on Instagram and TikTok at Dr. Kate Balestrieri. Everyone has questions, and I want to answer as many as I can. So feel free to email your questions to question@getnakedpodcast.com. If you're looking for a free 30-minute consultation with me or someone on my team, visit modernintimacy.com. And don't forget to join our newsletter, Modern Intimacy, on Substack. Let's meet back here next week. A new episode drops every Tuesday. Disclaimer, this podcast is not a substitute for therapy and does not constitute a professional relationship with Dr. Kate Balestrieri or Modern Intimacy. This podcast is strictly for education and entertainment purposes only.